you may be a believer, but maybe people in your life that you love so much just really don't want to hear what you have to say. Or, like in my case, there's someone, my father in law is kind of a tough nut, and he's looking for the scientific proof that God exists. Boy, oh boy, if you go, yeah, I got one of them too. I want you to stick around because my next author is going to talk about exactly science proving that God does exist. His book is called God's Existence, Truth or Fiction? The Answer Revealed. Welcome, author Gary Lindberg. We're glad that you're here today, Gary.
Well, thank you very much, Suzanne. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you, and I appreciate you taking time to talk with me.
Well, I think that a lot of us have questions when it comes to people asking us, so why do you believe in God? Science says, and then I start to sweat and get nervous. Tell me about your book and help us to understand how science and God's existence support each other.
Well, my book is a scientific study about the existence of God, in which I show how modern science actually proves the existence of God. And I have a different take in that I suggest that both the Bible and science say the same thing because both were created by God. And of course, I get into other more details about why people believe and why people need to believe in God and so forth. And I will cover that in the book.
That's a really good tease. So I'm going to pull out kind of the obvious one that people say, I believe in the Big Bang. So are you basically saying that if it was the Big Bang, God created that, he made that happen? Is that kind of the concept, generally speaking, you're talking about?
I would say if the Big Bang occurred, that would be created by God. But Professor Bonting suggested that the Big Bang, how can that occur if there's nothing there in the first place? How can you have an explosion to create something? An explosion generally destroys the life, not builds it. So I have some questions
Mm.
about whether it happened or not.
Very interesting. So you go in with a really skeptical eye. I mean, I want to back up a little bit. What is your history? What makes you into the analytical part? Because we talk to a lot of pastors and believers that are in the just the faith, and certainly not saying that you don't have faith, but you're looking at the analytical science part. What made you delve into that?
Well, in school, I took a lot of science, chemistry, physics, and all the sciences, and I took mathematics up through calculus. And so I tend to look at things more matter of factly. And I try not to look at the question of whether or not God exists through the Bible, because I already believe that, and a lot of people already believe that. So I don't need to, that is nothing new. But I want to show how science, modern science, actually proves God exists.
And Gary, what was the inspiration for your book?
Well, that's several things. Uh, when I was growing up, I started having different thoughts than other people had, and one is about the Bible, and when I was about 12 or 13, and then I thought, well, if God created the Bible, who created science? And the answer seemed obvious. God created that too. And then I hear this: there's no proof, physical proof of the God's existence. So I wanted to find out for myself. So that's why I examined all the different sciences to find out the answer.
So the book that comes to mind, Lee Strobel, proving that through science that God exists. What makes your book different from other books like that?
Well, my book is different because I show how modern science actually proves the existence of God. And I talk about uh, botany, zoology, uh, astronomy, anatomy, mathematics, physics, and chemistry.
Wow.
And and I take a different exam or different categories about the creation, and I use the categories by accident, by random, or by design instead of the older categories of by uh, chance, by necessity, or by design. So that's how my book is different.
Okay. And I imagine that, I mean, you sound like a very smart person, but you still probably learned some things along the way writing the book. What were a couple things that took you by surprise or that you learned?
About writing,
Yeah, or about the existence of God.
Well, I learned that for one thing, the biggest lesson was that a lot of Christians fear science.
Mm.
And it seemed to me that after I examined the evidence, I realized why so many Christians are afraid of science and how they feel like they're being double-minded if they believe both the Bible and science, because they think it's contradictory, but it's not contradictory. Now, scientists make mistakes like everybody else, and they jump to conclusions, they make assumptions, they misinterpret, they do all kinds of things that every human being does.
Sure.
And so the fact that a scientist might claim certain things doesn't make it true.
Hmm. What have people said about your book when they read it? Like, what are some of the responses that you're getting? Like, has there been anything profound, like, I didn't believe and I do now, and this is why, or anything like that?
I haven't had that, but people have been interested, and I have had on Facebook people criticize, oh, there's no physical evidence of God's existence. Of course, they don't read my book, so they don't know
Right,
what,
right.
what the evidence is. Some people say, oh, you're anti-science, because I very heavily criticize scientists in my book, but that's because they don't connect the dots. They're sloppy. And Paul Davies points out how one theory is that creation started with a microbe in a watery substance on the face of the earth. But he doesn't point out who created the microbe, who created the watery substance
Wow.
to start with. And they don't connect the dots. They don't offer the proof. And they don't admit they don't know. But they were high and mighty. They'll say they know, but they don't.
You know, there's great consequences to ignoring and not accepting that God is the creator of all. It's a dangerous place to go. I think people are a little bit nervous about the science because they don't feel like they can back it up, and I don't know why I believe. I just do, you know? What would you say to that person who says, you know, "I have someone in my life that needs facts." What are 3 quick talking points that I could say prove of God's existence through science?
Well, in my book, I point out that the brain has 100 billion neurons, and also there are 1 quadrillion intricate synapses in the brain. And the eye shows that 137 light sensitive cells, where optic nerves transmit signals to your brain at approximately 300 miles per hour. Those are some facts that demonstrate that can't happen by accident. That has to be proof. And I point out in botany that I found out when I took botany a very important lesson that all plant life is categorized in 7 different levels of categories, starting with kingdom, phylum, down to the most specific level of species. Later on in life, I found out that all animal life is categorized by the same levels. So it seemed to me that all plant life and all animal life is so well organized, you can't say that's by accident. It doesn't happen by random. It happens
Mhm.
by design. If it happens by design, that means there's a creator.
Wow, and that means surrender. That means admission, right?
Mhm,
And not a lot
mhm.
of people wanna go there.
Yeah.
Wow. So, let's talk about the new theory that you propose in the book.
Well, my theory is that starts with all life, plant, animal, and human, is either directed or non-directed. There's only 2 alternatives. There can't be any other alternative. If it's non-directed, that means life can be created and grow in different unlimited ways. In other words, a human being can have 2 heads, 2
Wow,
uh, uh, maybe 4 arms or
right.
4 legs or whatever. And animals, same thing. You could plant corn and get cucumbers instead. And during the lifetime of a
Hmm,
person, you could grow another head or another eye or something, because there's no restriction. Because there is restriction, and even the scientists will admit that we have DNA. That's a restriction that
wow.
God created.
That's incredible. I never thought about that, that if it was just random, the craziest things could happen.
Mhm.
But he's got a purpose to us having 2 eyes and 2 ears and yeah, there's certainly a greater God in charge of all this. Um, You talk about the Bible and science saying the same thing. I'd love for you to expound just a little bit more about that.
Well, the uh, God created the earth or the universe and the earth in 6 days, and the seventh day he rested, according to Genesis.
Yeah.
But some people think, well, that means the earth is only 6,000 years old. Well, scientists have figured out that it's like 13.5 billion years old,
Mm-hmm.
the whole
Mm,
universe.
mm-hmm.
So there's some kind of contradiction there. Well, if you understand that God is not limited by human timetables or time uh, concepts, you
Right.
have to understand that a day for God can be millions of years or
Mm-hmm.
billions of
Mm,
years. So
mm.
I would suggest that there are probably 6 significant periods when God created everything, but they lasted billions or millions at least, or billions of years. And so that's one way that I suggest that they both say the same thing.
Gary, I mean, my goodness, we are clearly only scratching the surface of what you have to say about this, but it's fascinating. You've made me think about so many amazing different points of view, and I thank you for that. We want to thank EC Publishing for making this interview possible, and share with us, where's the book available?
Well, anyone can go to my website, GaryRLindberg.com. That's GaryRLindberg.com. And they can click on the book of choice. Have a couple of books, and scroll down the page and click on their favorite bookstore, and they can get the book instead of going directly to Amazon or directly to Barnes and Noble or whatever.
Just
But
go
it
to the
has
website.
local bookstores too.
Okay, great. Gary Lindberg, God's Existence, Truth or Fiction? The Answer Revealed. Gary, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. I thank you for the time you've taken to talk with me. I appreciate it. It's
My
been a
pleasure.
pleasure.
Yes, thank you.